VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker, and we are on April 4th. The draft is coming right down the tunnel. 3 weeks and change away. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the draft and the quarterback situation. So I want to give a disclaimer right out of the gate. You'll see the title to this show, Why Vikings Trading in the Top 10 for a Quarterback Isn't Likely. My disclaimer is I am not opposed to the team doing this. This isn't an episode decrying the idea or saying, here's why Dustin Baker doesn't want a top 10 quarterback. No, if they do it, I'm all for it, so long as they identify their guy and roll with it. I would be ultra excited, actually. So this isn't to say that, there's just another guy saying we should keep Cousins forever. That's not at all what this episode is. This is me telling you why I don't think it will happen. And even, 2 or 3 episodes ago, I did a show explaining how it would happen, talking about all of the trade scenarios. So let's get that on record. If they trade in the top 10, this guy is for it. It'll be probably one of the most exciting eras waiting, for a year for the guy to be ready in Vikings football in a very long time. But let's talk about why this thing isn't likely. So my job used to be my hobby, but now it's my job is to figure out what this damn team is going to do in the draft. And this year is really a humdinger because I thought there would be more acquisitions in free agency, particularly at cornerback and maybe a wide receiver like DJ Chark or Juju Smith-Schuster to put the WR2 spot to bed. Of course, they signed Byron Murphy, and that's fabulous, but he's like the only certified cornerback who can start in September. You hope there's big things around the bend for Andrew Booth and Caleb Evans, and maybe there are, but they are not guaranteed commodities because of injury and then, rookie maturation. So what I hoped and what I thought would happen is they would sign somebody like Chark, get Byron Murphy, get Rock Ya-Sin, and then the draft would be complete gravy. You just take all the best players available and fill out the roster with guys you think are really going to make it. But now, because there's no other cornerbacks in this draft, I've had to go through all of these scenarios, like what are they going to do? I got to tell you guys and gals what I think they're going to do. And I have settled on the way that everything is right now. I think I'm ruling out a big, sexy, splashy trade into the first round to get, the guy of the future. So let's discuss why. This might be kind of a short episode because this is to the point. These are pretty spot-on things. So the Vikings employ this guy, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and each time that he talks about his philosophy in a draft or in free agent, he talks about value. Do we think in our heart of hearts that the value-based general manager is going to conduct a risky transaction to get into the top 10, probably where you want to be to get C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young? You're going to have to trade 3 first-rounders and then maybe something a little else to draft one of those guys, or if it's number 5 or number 6, 2 first-rounders and 2 thirds, something like that, for Anthony Richardson. I really don't think that the Wall Street analytics guy, although he loves to trade, I don't think with Kirk Cousins still on the roster for one more year, I don't think that he puts all the chips in the middle of the table per his value-based mantra to go for a quarterback. Does that make sense that the guy who over and over says you got to look at the value in the free agent. There's documented proof of a free agent of 4 years at least. And then in the rookie, they're lottery tickets. And for a guy that always says that he wants to maximize the value, I just don't think that it meshes with trading 3 first-rounders for a quarterback that's a maybe. Every quarterback besides, Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, and Peyton Manning that's come out of the draft in the last 25 years is a big fat maybe. All of these guys, and the big 4, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, they're all big fat maybes. None of them have that Trevor Lawrence stock or Andrew Luck stock. So I don't think it works this year for the Vikings to trade everything for a quarterback when you just so happen to employ the boss who is all about value. Does it seem like a good value for you to sign on for the unknown of a rookie quarterback for the price of 3 first-rounders. To me, that's a red flag. Now, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he doesn't, but I just don't see it, especially when they have other things that they need, like cornerbacks. And here's number 2. So the value-based general manager, the very definition of what he says he is, to me, does not jibe with trading everything, trading the farm for a first-round quarterback. Number 2 is right now, the Vikings have limited draft capital. They got 5 picks, and they don't have a second-rounder. Out of all the years in the last decade to contemplate this, should the Vikings trade into the top 10 for a quarterback, this might be the worst year to do it. With the satchel of draft picks that you have, it's not enough. Therefore, Kwesi would have to leverage the future, go way into the future, to use those draft picks to draft Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. So there are better years to do this. The Vikings just finished 13-4, so they have the 23rd pick. And you have to trade a bunch on top of that to get into the first round. And because there's only 5 draft picks with other depth needs on the roster, number 2 is it doesn't feel like the time and the place to spend the draft capital when your cupboard is already pretty barren. Does that add up? To me, it doesn't. And we're going to find out real soon, 3.5 weeks. And then the last one, at least for why I'm kind of thinking, this isn't going to happen, is the strategy itself. We're outside the top 10 right now. They're at the 23rd spot, and we're going to trade into the top 10 to go get our guy. That strategy is not foolproof. It sounds great, and it's fun, and however many months of anticipation and excitement that comes along with it, they're after the pick, great. But we think of Mahomes, and then we think of Josh Allen about the examples of when it worked. And that's really only when it worked. Here to tell you, Trey Lance in 2021, the 49ers were outside the top 10, traded everything for Lance, and nobody even knows if he's going to start in 2023. He could be usurped by Brock Purdy, who nobody on this planet outside of the state of Iowa had heard of until, December. Josh Rosen. The Cardinals were on the outside looking in of the top 10. Bada bing. They swung for the fences for Josh Rosen, who was considered the safest pick in that draft class. He played for the Vikings last year on the practice squad. That's how things are going for Josh. And then Josh Allen in 2018, that's an example. That's where it worked. The year before, Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs traded into the top 10, the 10th pick, to get it. And emphatically worked. Probably going to be the best quarterback of all time. If we're still doing the Super Bowl count as supremacy, then Mahomes, by the time it's all said and done, might get close to Brady. Before that was 2016, was Jared Goff. The Rams gave up. I challenge you to go pull up the Goff trade because we forget how much that cost the Rams. That was a lot. And he took them kind of to a Super Bowl, and they lost to the Patriots, and now he's a decent starter in the Lions. I don't know if that was worth all of the picks they gave up. I mean, he's a starter, so you could say, yeah, he's kind of worth it. Before him, probably the most egregious bad example was Blaine Gabbert. The Jaguars were, I think, 8-8 or 9-7 in 2010, so they traded into the top 10 to put themselves over the top. Does it sound familiar to you? It should, because that's what the Vikings are trying to do on the back of a 13-4 record. And they got Blaine Gabbert. Didn't work at all. And then before that, since 2005, was Mark Sanchez in 2009. Now, he guided them kind of personally. I don't know if you give him credit or the defense of the Jets to a couple of back-to-back AFC championships. Couldn't get over the hump. But out of the 7 times that this has happened since 2005, a team outside the top 10 trading in, you get 2 really good examples. And so that's fine. Again, if the Vikings want to, we're going to be the 3rd out of 8. Great. Let's try it. Again, I'm for it. This isn't saying, you guys are idiots. Don't even think about it. It's saying that we only think of the times when it worked. And if you think the Vikings are suddenly a lucky franchise, is going to be the team to do the Mahomes and Josh Allen thing, bless your heart. I tend to be like, oh God, hopefully don't screw it up. But that doesn't mean I'm right. That mentality, sort of, why don't we just go trade up and get Mahomes or Allen like those other 2 teams did? It's kind of how when you're looking at the other spots of this draft, when you're looking at Hendon Hooker or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you think about the examples in the third or fourth round when it's worked. Well, here's the deal. It's only really worked outside or between round 3 and 7 if the Vikings wait that long. Only guys in like the last 20 years when that's worked are Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and Kirk Cousins. It's like a 3% hit rate because there's been like 100 quarterbacks between round 3 and round 7 drafted in the last, I think it was 20 years. Or no, here's what I did. It was between 20 and 2015. And yeah, the only guys that hit were Prescott, Cousins, and Wilson. It might have been 2016 with Prescott in there. So, and then that's your holy grail when you're thinking about, all right, we're going to go get Kellen Mond in the third round of the 2021 draft. Why are we doing that? Well, because it worked for Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson. We're going to be the team that does it. It hardly ever works. So that's the mentality I'm talking about when you're trading into the top 10 is we only look at the circumstances where it worked and we just don't care or forget about all the rest. That's the risk. And that's why I don't think that Adolfo-Mensa will necessarily trade into the top 10 because it's not guaranteed value and it's a humongous risk. And then on top of this, this just came to mind, is that it seems like some team, like the Tennessee Titans, is going to jump up to number 3, trade a bunch of shit to the Cardinals, and then we're just going to have 4 quarterbacks go off the board right away. And if that's the case, then you're screwed as a Vikings fan. You're either going to reach for Hendon Hooker at number 23 or wait for Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Jaron Hall or Clayton Tune, and hopefully you're one of the teams that really, really nails it with these mid-rounders. But with all the smoke about some team trading up to get to that number 3 spot, it just seems that it's the idea that I proposed a few days ago where the Vikings could maybe get to the Eagles spot if one of these guys fell and then the trade price would be cheaper, like 2 first-rounders and a third. I don't even know if that's going to be allowed to happen because we might just have the big 4 go off the board in the top 4 spots. So, yeah, if the Vikings want to try it, do the splashy trade thing, everybody will get behind it, I'm guessing, but I just don't see it happening this year. I think that when we look up on draft night, Thursday the 27th at midnight or so, we will have seen that Adolfo-Mensa traded once or twice down the board, and then the first 2 picks were probably a cornerback and a wide receiver. That's what I'm rolling with now. I reserve the right to change that if they sign somebody, but we'll get to that. We got 3 weeks to formulate official predictions and all that. I'll be back tomorrow with Josh Fry. You remember yesterday how I specified my from the hip theories? I've asked Josh to do that tomorrow, and we'll hit you with that then and there. Skol, baby.